members, the public into the gallery. A couple of members have got work experience students with them today. They're going to be in the public gallery, but just that they can't be here for the closed session. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Alex?
Can I declare an interest on the prescribing?
Yes.
I'll leave.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
It's handy being there.
Okay, members, we're content to start the meeting in open session. Yeah, I've apologies from the Deputy Chairperson, Mr. Dallatt.
That's very funny.
Any other apologies? Okay, members, the minutes of the last meeting are of the 10th of December are at page 6 of your electronic packs. Members, if you're content with the minutes of those meetings of the 10th of December, I'll sign them into the record. Agreed. Okay, members, agenda item 3, we have some correspondence from the Irish National Teachers Organisation, which is at page 11 of your packs. You'll find the correspondence from the Teachers Organisation relating to the costs of precautionary suspension of teachers. Members, do you have any comments to make on the correspondence? Or are we content to forward this correspondence to the Audit Office?
So proposed.
Proposed. Okay, thank you. Members, there are no new matters arising. Under matters arising, I'd like to invite Kieran and Richard to the table. Members, just some chairperson's business. Members, the chair of the Audit Committee, along with other members, and I met CNAG yesterday just to brief us on the implications of the cut to the Audit Office budget. Kieran, it was proposed that it would be a 5% cut, but you believe it, it's a 6, it could be more. So just if you want to kind of, brief members on that.
Well, if we had been holding a, I suppose, steady state between 14-15 and 15-16 as set out in our corporate plan, our budget would have been 8,391,000 net. However, the executive has used a budget figure of 8.2 million as its starting point for a 5% reduction. So that would result in a final budget net figure of 7,875,000 or 516,000. So that's around 6% rather than 5%. Now, I suppose we've said it many times here before, we have already achieved significant savings, and we wish to continue to play our part in reducing costs. However, we do feel a sum of over £500,000 is quite unmanageable in 15-16 because it takes time to actually realise savings. So that's likely the financial year that's going to kick in a couple of months. So it's a short note, and timing is an issue. And I think we need a longer lead time to prepare. Now, we will re-evaluate all our budget lines, but I suppose in the short term we have very limited room to manoeuvre, as the bulk of our spend is on salaries. 70% of our spend is salaries. So if you're looking at big savings, the only way we can do that is through a reduction in headcount. And our projection of natural turnover is quite low given our age profile and the current job market. So very few, if any, retirements in the offing. We had already set out in our draft corporate plan how we wish to rationalise the management structure of the office in any event. And part of the objective of that was to bring about meaningful savings. So in order to do that, we would need access to the restructuring pot of money, our voluntary exit scheme. So we could do really very, very little without access to that. And we have, of course, been in communication with DFB before Christmas, just expressing our wish to be part of that. But there is a timing issue here. There's no certainty relating to the timing of the access to this, the amount we can secure, and of course the take-up of our own staff of a voluntary scheme. So we have put some figures to DFP, and I think we're conscious that we would have to downsize somewhere in the region of 5 to 10 over a couple of years. The difficulty with the budget presented for 15-16, even if we had access to the scheme, that's unlikely to kick in until September of 15. So you would only get a half-year benefit of that in the first year. So there is a huge timing issue. In the worst case scenario, if we were to lose all of that in 15-16, what's the impact on our work programme? The first thing we would have to do, and we'll probably have to do that anyway, is really to cut down any temporary appointments that we have, because that's something we can control. And we'd only really about 75,000 budgeted for that in 15-16. And cut down maybe on the use of private sector firms that do work for us. But that might be a false economy in the longer term. The difficulty with that is that we would have to deflect more of our internal resources onto the accounts work, which then would impact on the public reporting work that we do for this committee. The accounts work is statutory work. It's work we have to do. Statutory requirement to audit accounts. The value for money work that we do for this committee, while there's statutory provision for it, the amount of it we do is discretionary. So we certainly would not be able to provide the same level of service to you as we've done in the past. What are the options? Well, we're considering in detail all the options that we realistically have, but it's highly unlikely that we could meet a 6% cut in next year. So we're determining what's doable, and we're going to come back to the audit committee on this next week. We certainly think something is doable, but not to that extent. And access in any option to the restructuring fund is essential. So the earlier we would get access to that, the more we can do. But I think these are issues then, I think, for us to discuss with the audit committee next week.
Thank you.
That's probably all I can say really at this stage.
Okay, and as I say, a number of people looking to get in, but just to say that I and the chair of the audit committee met with yourself yesterday, and it was alarming to hear that the worst case scenario would be that you couldn't get access to the redundancy fund. But I know there's ongoing discussions.
We would be hopeful that we can get to that. The earlier we can get,
and obviously, it would have an impact on our work that you do with us as a committee, if that was the case. I've got a number of people, Sean, Alex and then Paul.
Thanks Chair, and thanks Kieran for that. Certainly I would be very, very concerned. I think we all understand we're in severe budgetary times, constraints, and we all have to tighten the belts and whatever. But I think, it is a time that we have to ensure that there's value for money and that there's greater accountability. So it just concerns me greatly that such a cut is coming to you, and when you make a comment like you can't, it's be difficult to provide the same level of service, and we as a public accounts committee depend on you in the audit office as well. So just register my concern about it.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, just when you mentioned about you would be able to do less work for us, how much less work? Would that mean we'd have to cut back on our reports to help you, or is?
Well, no, it's the reports we do for you. For example, we would do, I think our target was we were doing 11 major reports for you. At the minute, you actually have some choice, so you don't take absolutely everything. We had already intimated, even before this, but we were going to get some sort of budget cut, not on this scale, but we'd already intimated that we're proposing just to cut down maybe the number of reports slightly. That would give you less choice, and that would mean then we would engage more with you at the upfront as to what we were doing, met your requirements. There's other ways to go. Is maybe to put less effort into particular reports, so they'd be more maybe be less in depth. So we'll just have to cut our cloth. I'd say I'd be determined to protect this core work as best I possibly can. An awful lot of what we do doesn't actually come near this committee. It's the stuff we do on accounts, and that's statutory. It's important. It's time bound. We have to get those accounts certified. Most of the big ones within 3 months of the end of the financial year, and by and large we do that. In a worst case scenario, I could delay production of some of those accounts, but at the end of the day, I could say, well, I'm chopping, 5% of the cost of certain studies. That wouldn't actually translate into cash unless my head count actually comes down. So the figures we're talking about, and we've acknowledged it ourselves, is that we do need to reduce numbers of staff. Or part of our idea of restructuring was that we'd try and protect, as far as possible, the frontline staff that do the audit. But we do feel that we can trim back on management costs. All that's subject then to uptake of a voluntary scheme. But the details of that remain to be seen. But if it was too harsh and too quick, it's bound to impact adversely on the business. We will get savings down the track when local government reform fully works through. If the number of departments reduce, by 3, we'll eventually get a saving there, but that's at the back end. We'll find where we have departments joining together, there's a lot of trouble and hassle and complexity in getting systems together up front. So there will be savings through the reform of government further down the track, but they'll not be immediate. That's the...
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Just appreciate that there seems to be some discrepancy between the figure being used by DFP or by Department of Finance in relation to the costs.
Yep.
And as a consequence, if a percentage reduction of their figure and their calculation is made, it's a bigger impact. How is that discrepancy come about, and why is there no marrying up of?
Well, our audit committee did write to DFP, so they've just used a different baseline. It's their baseline, but not the figures that were in our corporate plan. So that's just a 1% further hit on it. Yeah,
that's the point. That it's the amount of money that's passed over by DFP to actually run the audit office, and in association with that, why have we got a different figure? Because there shouldn't be.
There shouldn't be. I don't know where their starting point has come from. They have their own calculations on this. But at the end of the day, it's really the audit committee's job then to approve the budget. DFP, of course, can make suggestions. They had actually commented at an early stage on the corporate plan in a quite a positive way. Yeah.
Okay.
And acknowledged that we had proposals to make savings going forward.
I appreciate that each department is probably going to be looking for where they can make efficiency savings, and those that want to take part in a voluntary exit scheme. and my understanding is that that will be opened to all. So I don't think that there would be an exclusion of the audit office from that.
We'll be hopeful of that, but that is down to the detail of when it would kick in and whatever. If someone was saying, in 16, 17, you have a year to plan for it. So we're talking about a budget that's starting from April, so it's lead time is a key issue. And but we would acknowledge if everybody else is to take pain in us, we'll do our bit as well. But we have a huge timing issue. I suppose the only other couple of points I would make is the baseline we're starting from is pretty tight because we had, over the last 5 years, I think we've knocked roughly 25% off. So we're taking this cut off a fairly tight ship. So if any fat there has, a lot of it has been already stripped out.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Roy?
Yeah.
I hope you're not being victimised because of the Minister's previous comments that we have picked up, so I hope that's not the case. But just
yes.
on this issue of making efficient changes and the timing, I mean, was the first you heard of this like us with the latest budget statement, or had there been warnings prior to that?
Just about a day or two before, we had sort of indications from.
Okay. That certainly doesn't give much time to prepare. So instead of potentially you may have recruited people in the past 6 months, whatever, things could have been. The way you approach such a timing is very important, and there's no notice of that makes it's actually going to be potentially cost money to give voluntary retirement schemes to balance things out. But the other aspect of this is frequently your reporting brings in savings to the individual areas which you scrutinise.
Yes.
What assessment do you think this will have in terms of adversely affecting the overall performance and the value for money aspect of things?
Well, to say in terms of savings, we more than pay our way. Give you a couple of examples. You may be aware that DARD were subject to financial penalties over the year, quite significant. We were commissioned to actually do some work, which was to give assurance to Europe. Systems were tightened up. That has actually been very fruitful, and we think there's a saving at least 16, somewhere between 16 and 30 million as a result of that work. So that's something that DARD, I think, would take credit on. Another example is the National Fraud Initiative. We've been working on that this 3 or 4 years. That has yielded savings of 30 million. That's cumulative savings over that period. I'd say with 2 points, those savings, that's a conservative assessment to be measured conservatively, and those figures are independently validated by our auditors. So there are savings. That said, we can make all the proposals in the world, but it's up to the executive to actually implement recommendations that would yield the savings. So there's some areas, for example, like legal aid, where we did a huge big piece on that a couple of years ago. Legal aid was around 100 million. So there was enormous potential for savings. It's been disappointing, maybe savings haven't come through to the extent that we might have envisaged, but what I want to do is like a follow-up report on that, just to keep the pressure up. So it's not that every report that we do yields savings. A lot of our work doesn't, but it's one important dimension of what we do. And certainly, Mr. Begg's point, I'm looking at our programme going forward, so we'll be picking more topics that are likely to yield savings. So some of the topics we'd look at are you know, for quality of service, but others, there is, you know, huge potential for savings, and that is an important part of our work. If we're doing less of that type of work, then it follows then we're less likely to get those.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and as you said, there's an audit committee next week on this issue, and I'm sure you'll keep this committee briefed, updated as time ahead. I think Adrian was looking for a question, but he's gone out. So we'll move on. He can, if he wants to ask his question, he can do it maybe when we're finished. Okay, members, agenda item 5, the inquiry into tackling social housing tenancy fraud, memorandum of reply. It's at pages 14 to 20 in your electronic pack. Members, as you would read, this response is largely positive, coming from the department. 6 of the 8 recommendations have been accepted, and 3 of the recommendations are in the process of being implemented. 2 of the recommendations have been partially accepted. Recommendation 3 relates to the building of the assessment in the adequacy of tenancy fraud strategies and the review of related performance targets to the regulator's inspection regime for housing associations. DFP has provided an explanation as to why it believes that the DSD's current monitoring activities are sufficient and indeed appropriate in the assessment and monitoring of tenancy fraud strategies. Does anybody want to make a comment on recommendation 3? I think it's very self-explanatory. Yes, Roy?
I only joined the committee after this report would have been examined, but I'm just seeking clarification. Under the current processes, is there access to every utility by housing executive and housing associations? You know, is that part of tenancy agreements, or is there some protocol that ensures that that does happen, so that the vacant properties can be easily spotted? That's
sorry, there's another recommendation further down this that covers utilities.
Yeah.
There certainly seems to be in progress there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, members, recommendation 5 relates to the participation of housing associations in the National Fraud Initiative. DFP report that 2 large housing associations, which represent 37% of housing stock here, have agreed to participate in the current round of the initiative. Wider participation of the remaining housing associations will be informed by the experiences of these 2 associations. Kieran, do you want to make a comment on that?
Well, it's good that the 2 big ones are now into this, and I suppose I can understand the rationale. Let's see how it works for these, and if there's good results, then we'll expand it rather than everybody going in at once. But of course, there'll be a time lag before the others will come through. So I can't predict if they do this what will actually come out of it, because you don't know till you do it. But at least there's a start being made on it.
63% not participating?
Yeah.
That would be my concern.
Yeah.
If it were 63% participating and 37% to consider,
Not.
well and
Yes,
good.
the other way.
The other thing, I suppose I would say, it is not a big deal to actually participate. And we talked about this in other contexts. The vast majority of public bodies are now participating, and it's not unduly onerous.
Okay, and they do state that they will be informed of the experiences of being involved by the 2 associations.
And that report will come back to us as well, then, obviously, at that stage.
Yeah.
We'll certainly be tracking this. We do a biannual report on the National Fraud Initiative, so we'll be reporting on how this is working out the next time we report.
I still don't understand why everybody isn't in it automatically. Because presumably you just need their signature approval for the data to be at it. It's not going to be hugely onerous on anybody.
Well, it is. I suppose there's some areas that are more productive than others. Some organisational concerns about data protection, for example, PSNI are not in this yet, so there are concerns about data protection.
Talking about housing associations.
But housing association, others then would say they might be sceptical of what they get out of it. So if you get one organisation gets good results, then others will copy. It's important that they actually do believe in it. We don't want people actually paying lip service to it. What's important, when the data matching exercise is done, there will be on the computer, and the matches and hits then will be presented to the organisation to investigate. So they have to do work then, and there'll be certain hits that the computer will say, well, these are ones you should prioritise because they're strong hits that there's something wrong. They can't look at everything, but there is a resource required to actually investigate what comes through. But most of the rest of the public sector have been in this game. Housing associations are not part of the public sector. The public sector proper has been in this game for 4 or 5 years.
But they're entirely dependent on public sector funding, or virtually they're very dependent on public sector funding, and my concern is if there is fraud going on, it's not off their back, it's off the public sector's back.
I have a thought for you, because we will have housing associations up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a perfect opportunity to actually put a question
To them on that, yeah. Okay. Paul?
Thank you. No, Chair, I appreciate that it looks like they've accepted most of the recommendations, and some they've already started to implement, but I have a difficulty with this organisation in particular, in that sometimes it seems it's easy to say they've accepted something, but very rarely is there outcomes for accepting it. Or hold their hands up and they say, we've got that wrong, we'll not do that again. But how do you ever know? And this is what I'm saying. We need to make sure and appreciate that with the ever decreasing budgets that we're working with, it makes it difficult. But we did say we would have to revisit this to make sure. And I think likewise we've already fired a shot across a couple of other bodies recently, where they're now saying, well, we know that these people are going to be looking at us within 12 months again, whenever they're being audited, to ensure that they have these measures in place and that there is a marked improvement upon their detection and action being taken to resolve them. So, I sometimes think accepting a thing is sometimes an easy way out for some of them, and want to make sure that they don't just see it like that, because we had a report that came to us that was done and they accepted many items several years ago, and we had another report on the same organisation, and the same issues that were agreed and had been accepted by them before were still relevant to, in a report that we done 6 months ago. And I think that that's something that we need to make sure.
I think at the time we said this is one that we would have to revisit.
Yeah.
And that means us going in and looking at not just accepting but implementation. So I think it's just a question of when's the appropriate time to do that, but it's not one to be left for too long.
Okay. Okay, members, are we content to note the MORs, and as it is customary, we request an update in 12 months on the implementation of the recommendations?
Yeah.
Agreed? Okay, members, for the remaining item of business today, it's necessary that we move into closed session. Are we content to move into closed?
This is the Northern Ireland